What would you write about if you only had a year to live? That's the question I want you to keep in mind as we look at John Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn, a 200-year-old poem that has long bewildered and confused students, but that at its core asks a question close to all of us. What kind of mark do we leave on this world when we're done? Okay, first thing you need to know about this poem is the title, because if you don't know what an ode or a Grecian urn is, then you're going to be pretty confused right away. So an ode is an ancient, elevated form of poetry. The Romantics really liked it. It focuses on a person, object, or occasion. In this sense, we're focusing on an object, a Greek urn, which would be an ancient urn. You can see in this drawing here, which is by Keats. So yeah, he's a great poet and artist and also doctor, a very talented guy. You can see that there is drawings, pictures along the side of the urn. And if you spun the urn or walked around it, you'd be able to read the story, so to speak. If you've ever seen Disney's Hercules, the muses, the narrators who are singing throughout the movie, they're basically drawn like an ancient Greek urn because they're telling the story. So, usually I read the entire thing and then do an analysis, but because this poem's a little bit longer, I'm just going to go stanza by stanza. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, Sylvan historian who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme, what leaf-fring'd legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals or of both? In Tempe or the dales of Arcady, what men or gods are these? What maidens loth? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Whew. So, first thing I want to point out is there is a lack of sound. The urn doesn't speak. We have to look at it. The onus is on the viewer. The responsibility is on the viewer. So the speaker of our poem is someone looking at an urn. Next up, we're told what the urn does. It is a historian. It has a tale. It has a legend. So it preserves stories, and it preserves them well. Keats says that it can express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. Keats is a poet. He really likes rhymes. But according to him, the urn is even better at telling stories. That's in the tradition of the ode. Really praising that urn there. And finally, we have some rapid-fire questions at the end, which when I told you, hey, the urn has a story on it, you might have thought, well, I wonder what story's on it. That's what the speaker is wondering. These are all questions of what is happening on the urn, and they give us some clues as to the characters and events that we'll discover in the next stanzas. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on. Not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit, ditties of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve, she cannot fade. Though thou hast not thy bliss, forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Okay, so again, we have an emphasis on silence, and we are told that the unheard sounds of life are even sweeter than the ones that we do hear, the things that don't happen or are about to happen and never do. And that's what's being referred to in the green portion of the poem. We get some characters. There's a fair youth, and he is a musician, playing a song beneath a tree. And then we have a bold lover who is on the cusp of kissing a girl, but they're not quite there, and they're frozen in time. They'll never kiss. But Keats says, do not grieve this, because even though you can never kiss, you'll both always be beautiful and fair and in love. And the youth will never leave their song, and the trees will never be bare. Those are the unheard melodies of life that are sweeter. And even though it's sad, I didn't get to kiss her, well, you're frozen in that moment of joy and ecstasy forever. So that's where Keats is saying this is a happy poem. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodist unwearied, forever piping songs forever new, more happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead, and a parching tongue. So some people, some famous poets throughout history have said, this is not a great poem. Okay, I'll admit this is a little bit much on the happy in this stanza, but one thing we can commend Keats for here is he's telling it like it is. Sometimes poems are super vague and ambiguous. That can be frustrating. Keats is laying it all out there. This is a happy thing. Why is it a happy thing? Because this musician and this couple are forever warm, panting, and young. Even though their actions are incomplete, they're never going to get sick of them. Look at that word I highlighted, cloyed. That's a word we don't use very often anymore, but it means sickened by an excess of sweetness. And that's a really great word to use here. So think of your favorite song from 2 years ago. You're probably sick of it now. Or maybe your favorite movie or video game or even favorite food. If you've had it too much, if you've had an excess of sweetness, even though it's great, you get sick of it. It doesn't do much for you anymore, or at least not in the way that it once did. That's never going to happen to these people on the urn because they are frozen in a moment of passion, both romantic passion and artistic passion. And Keats praises this and says it's very happy. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadest thou that heifer, lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town by river or seashore, or mountain built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk, this pious morn? And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. So in this stanza, we simply have the turn of the urn. The speaker has either spun it or walked around it, and in doing so, we get the rest of the story. We're told there's a sacrifice going on. There's a priest leading a cow to the sacrifice, and even though the town isn't on the urn, he's hypothesizing that an entire town's worth of people have come to this celebration. So again, we have a frozen moment that, for everyone except the cow, is quite glorious. Think of a vacation or a holiday. They're just frozen in celebration. Final stanza. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with bread of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou silent form dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity cold pastoral. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain, in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. Okay, that's pretty hard to figure out. So in the blue we have, is art eternal? Keats tells us that the urn has outlived many generations. It's going to outlive his, and it's probably going to outlive ours. And the natural reaction to this is kind of jealousy. When I told this to my students, hey, that urn's going to live longer than us, they were like, well, not if we break it. So that's natural. We want to live longer than the urn. We're focused on ourselves, but Keats doesn't resent the urn like we might. Instead, he calls it a friend to man. And what will this friend tell us? That beauty is truth and truth beauty. This is the most famous line of the poem, and it's a tricky double metaphor. If something is beautiful, it must therefore be truthful. And if something is truthful, it has beauty built into it. So what does he mean by that? Well, basically, that when you create art, if that art is true, it is beautiful. And if your art is beautiful, then it is true. And if that's all there is on earth and all you need to know, it sounds like a true statement according to the urn, which means Keats may just well have created a beautiful and truthful poem. Now, I think that's being a little simplistic on the very, very complex ideas of beauty and truth. But there's something to be said of that simplicity, and it created a thesis statement for the romantic generation that beauty and truth are what's key to them. That's pretty cool. So there's something else that we should talk about with this poem, which is Keats's life. He died less than 2 years after writing it. He was a doctor. He treated tuberculosis, his family who had tuberculosis, so he knew he had contracted it. He knew he was going to die rather soon, a brutal death. And if you go to Rome, you can see his grave, and you might notice that his epitaph, what's carved into it, is missing his name. In its place, we get this quote, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." What does that mean, to write your name in water? Well, it means to write your name and have it disappear right as you're writing it. Keats didn't think his name was written in stone. He didn't even put it on the stone of his gravestone. He thought that his poems would be forgotten. He died believing that they were just going to fade away like words written across the surface of water. But he was wrong. And as much as he praises this urn for its longevity and withholding truth and beauty, the poem about the urn is far more famous than the urn. We're not even sure what urn he was looking at exactly, but a lot of people know this poem. People have been reading it for 200 years. And I think that is an interesting idea. What mark do we leave on this earth when we go? Well, we can't really know. A lot of people have carved their name in stone, and they've been forgotten. Keats thought he'd be forgotten, but here he is continuing to be one of the most beloved and well-read poets of all time. I think sometimes when people pass away, they feel like their life is a waste, but they might not realize the ripple effect that their actions have had and the way they've affected others and maybe inspired or motivated or even just shown kindness to people throughout the rest of time. Now, I don't know if that's all there is to this life, but it's a pretty cool thing to think about. So, some bonus stuff for you. Lasting influence. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. Famous line. That's the most famous influence of this poem. That line comes up all the time. You'll hear it a lot now that you've read it. A less famous instance of this poem's influence is the movie Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal. If you've seen this movie, the ending reminds me very strongly of this poem. If you haven't seen this movie, I won't tell you anymore because I don't want to ruin it for you, or spoil it for you or whatever. It's a pretty decent movie. If you have seen it, go watch the ending on YouTube, and tell me what you think. Am I crazy? Am I just reading poetry into places where it isn't because I've spent too much time, making these videos about poems, or is there something there? Or, does it even matter? Who knows? Anyway, check it out. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please feel free to like and subscribe if this is the sort of thing you're into. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I would love to answer them. And if you have a video you want me to make, please feel free to suggest it. I've had a couple people make suggestions, so I kind of have a backlog now. But I'd be happy to write something back to you. I'm a very small channel, but I log in every day, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for watching. Go to a museum, find an urn, write a beautiful poem about it, and have a good one. Bye.